Welcome to Suzanne's studio. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host, and it gives me such great pleasure to have the opportunity to have Ginger Summit as my guest tonight. Ginger is a world-class, actually a Renaissance woman, and if there was another adjective like that, you'd hear it. But Ginger is a handcraft and textile artist, and tonight she's going to show us the fascinating story of felt and fiber arts. Welcome, Ginger. I should learn that better, but anyway, it's so wonderful to have you on the show, and all of this gorgeous art is yours.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you for the opportunity to share this world with others, because it's a passion right now, and I'm always delighted to share it.
Well, you're so eclectic. You've done so much artwork. I always want to ask quickly, how did it start with you when you were a child?
Right. I think that I've always been interested in textile arts because my mother was, and her friends. So from a very young age, I learned how to sew. I learned how to knit and crochet, and simply we were expected to make things with our hands. And from there, it just continued to grow. Even though I didn't have formal training, once the interest is introduced to a young child, it never goes away. When I was older, I decided that what I really wanted to do, even though I could knit and crochet, I really wanted to learn how to weave. So I started getting a loom, which led to more. I eventually had several looms, 7. And then looms will expand not only to how people weave in other cultures and how the different processes of weaving are done, but also where the yarn comes from and how you get to the material that you can use for weaving. So it's been a long process throughout my entire life, and it's something that will always be with me.
But this right now is your favorite.
This is my favorite now. Our house ran out of space, and so when it was time to clean house, I found new homes for 2 spinning wheels and 5 of the looms. The other looms are folded up and put away in a corner, but I still ended up with lots of fleece, because you start when you're doing the spinning process, you have a lot of fleece. I have a friend whose husband shears sheep, so I had an endless supply of fleece to work with, but I was looking for another way that I could use that fleece. I turned to felting, which has actually been a part of the, not the art world necessarily, but certainly the craft world that women used to sustain their cultures for thousands of years.
Really?
So, starting with where we associate it mostly is in Mongolia and in Central Asia, because when you're nomadic, you can't carry a spinning wheel and a loom with you.
Right.
So you have to just take your fleece and make something that is going to be sturdy, that you can use for your homes, for your clothing, for protection, in any number of ways. So what that provided was a fabulous excuse to travel. So I did go over to Mongolia to find out exactly how they did that. And then I went to Eastern Europe, because Scandinavia and Eastern Europe are the countries where felting has really become an extremely high form of artwork, craft and art. So that was a good place to learn from the masters. When I came home, I've just been playing ever since. There are so many different ways that you can, so many different directions that you can take felting.
Well, you have to show us. How do you start?
Okay, you start with fleece that you get from the sheep. And this is just a very small example of some of the fleece that has come from a sheep. You can see that it is still tightly knotted. and it would be very hard to do anything with it at this point. I did wash it after it came off of the sheep because it can be very dirty and filled with animal debris. But washing it is not a problem. Then what you have to do is to comb it. And I have combing tools, carding tools, to make the fibers come out straight. And that would be like this. You see, it's a far...
You had to do a lot of combing.
That's right. But with this, it's now ready for spinning, and it's ready for to turn into a yarn, or it's ready to turn into a felt project at this point. One of the things that you learn right away is that there are hundreds of varieties of sheep, and every sheep's pelt is going to be different as far as how curly it is, what color it is. A lot of people assume that a sheep is either black sheep or a white sheep, and it's surprised to realize how many different colors in between the sheep are and what they feel like.
Yeah, it's
right.
so soft.
Some of them are very soft, and some of them are very coarse.
Oh, that's a coarse one.
That's a very coarse one, and this one is much softer.
But I cannot believe, Ginger, that from this, that all of this emerged. I just can't believe it.
Well, that's part of the magic of felting, that you can start with something as simple and as readily available as the fleece. When I say readily available, I mean you can go down to your 4-H project, particularly when they have county fairs. The 4-H kids are very often anxious to sell the pelts because they can get money from them. And also if you go online on Google or something like that, you can also find fleece.
Is it expensive?
Sometimes it can be very expensive, but it also can be very reasonable.
Yeah.
Particularly if you go to your county fair, it's very reasonable because those kids, first of all, you deal with the children, the young people, and that's always nice to do. You get to see the sheep, and then you get to share with them. After I've combed it, then what I do is to dye it. Now, a lot of times, I can dye it myself, but with the work that I do, I need a variety of colors. So I can buy dyed fleece, and this is mostly available online. There are a couple of retail stores, but they're harder to find.
And look at all the different
And
colors.
there are so many different colors. And sometimes you're surprised at how they come out because different fleece from different sheep will take that dye differently. But that's part of the fun of doing a craft project.
Like our hair, too, right? So then what happens?
Yes. Well, there are two different kinds of, actually there are several different techniques for felting, and one of them is considered wet felting, and one of them is considered dry felting. The process is basically that you have all of these little fibers. When you're spinning them, the spinning wheel will twist them round and round and get all of these fibers engaged so that they become very, very strong if they're twisted like this.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I could pull it apart, but once they're twisted, they're very tightly engaged.
I see.
Now, if I'm doing felting, I want those fibers to become engaged, but what I do is to cross them with each other, and then there are two different ways that you can get these fibers to become sort of tangled and ensnared among each other. One is using water and soap, and the other one is using a needle. Now, let me show you the needle process first. It's not just an ordinary needle. I'm going to move all of these things away.
Okay.
I have a long needle here that it has a barb on it. They come in different sizes. And what I do is to, take those fibers and roll them up into a ball and then I start poking them with that sharp needle. And what that needle is doing is forcing all of those fibers to mix with each other. And the shafts on the sides of those fibers are getting tangled, so that the more you poke them with this sharp needle, the tighter this ball will get. I consider this a little bit like my clay, so that this little ball can, I can keep adding more and more fleece to it, and it will get larger and larger, so that then I can create objects like these. Any shape that I want, just by expanding the fleece as I roll it up and as I poke it with the needles. And I can add colors. I can make smaller pointed things like the beak on the little hummingbird.
So
I can add a little wire to it to give it strength. For these guys, they're still a little bit squashy, but because they're all fleece inside, and it does take a lot of fleece that you're rolling up and poking with a needle. Right.
But you know, you have to be not only a regular artist, but a sculptor in order to make
Yes.
everything, right?
You are sculpting, right?
Yeah.
Now, the other process for felting, I said there were two kinds. One is wet, dry felting, which is this. It never needs to touch water. But another process is wet felting. And what I do is to take fleece and spread it out on usually a bubble wrap, or on my table outside in different layers, and then I add a second layer on top and another layer, so that they're perpendicular to each other. Now, I can make these layers as thick as I want, or as fine as I want, and as large as I want. I will then, if this has been on a sheet of plastic, I will cover it with a net and spray it with warm soapy water and start rubbing it. And those fibers will start getting tangled with each other. And as they start getting tangled, I use more and more pressure. I roll it up and continue working on these things until these fibers shrink together and form something that's nice and tight. Now, you can make something. When I'm making a scarf,
Yeah, that would be a good example, wouldn't
right,
it?
the first layer that I put down is a piece of silk fabric. And then on top of that, I lay the fibers. Then I put my warm soapy water, a net over it, and warm soapy water, and rub. And as I'm rubbing, all of those fibers become engaged with the silk fabric on the back, so that they're very much act as one fiber. They will not become separated. And you have something where the silk has provided its strength, and the fleece has provided it a softness and a color and a texture.
And it's very soft.
Yeah.
So this seems like it's a very long project. So just say, how long would it take to make this? Not an amateur,
Right.
but someone that really knew about
Right.
it.
Well, this is the kind of project that I would teach for a beginner class. And in a class, we could do this in about 3 hours.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
The whole scarf?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty fast.
It's not, it doesn't take a long 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
But there are many different levels that you can take this. These are this is sort of, I want to say, beginning. Although they can be very beautiful because the colors of the fleece can be varied. And This particular fleece has some silk in it. The variety of the colors and the textures of the fibers can give you a lot of different character in that.
I see. And but of course, this all has to be dyed first.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And is this like regular felting? You know, people really got into it, became so popular.
Right.
I've got some felted hats, not that I did, but I saw it where they would wet it and throw it against the wall.
Yes. Now, a lot of the felted things that you might see, like the hats, the mittens,
Yeah.
what people do often is to knit them first. Have you ever put accidentally a knitted sweater in your washer
yes.
and your dryer?
It's done.
And when you pull it out, it fits your child or your dog, but
Right.
it doesn't fit you anymore.
Right.
And that's because all of those fibers have shrunk together and gotten very, very tight.
I see.
And so that's exactly what's happened with these. The fibers have shrunk down quite a bit and have gotten very engaged with the silk on the inside.
So another, excuse me.
Yeah.
But it's very strong, isn't it?
Yes.
But you can, what if you wanted to wash this?
Oh, you can wash it very easily by just putting this in a bin with warm soapy water and just rub it very gently.
Yeah.
And then lay it out to dry. I would not put it in the washing machine and the dryer because it would get very small and very tight and very heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you want to keep it flexible, you would keep it this way.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your paintings.
The pictures, yes,
The
indeed.
pictures.
What you can do, we've talked about just laying the fleece out on something, but if you want to make a mat, whoops, there we go, baby, like this, or if you want to make a picture or an image like these, what you would first do is what I call making my canvas, where I have taken the fleece and I have laid it out and covered it. I've laid the fibers out, covered it with a netting, and then rubbed it with warm soapy water. It's not tightly felted. It's still a little bit loose.
Yes.
But it holds together. Now, if I were making a mat like this, I would put my image on and then I could just rub it very tight and it would become quite solid.
Now tell about what
Like
is
these.
the image?
The image would be anything that you want to put with colored fibers. And the way that I put those on is, again, it's a combination of wet felting and dry felting. So with my, what I call my canvas, right here, I would put it on a piece of foam, and then I would spread out the colors that I want to use to make an image.
So you have to have that in mind.
You have, right.
I mean, what you want to make.
Right.
But your paintings, I can't believe those, did you?
Well, sometimes I start with a photograph that, like, I go to Yosemite a lot, and so I have many photographs that I've taken, or I've made sketches. And so I have an image in my mind, and with the flowers, they just sort of grow as you're working. And I'll show you how easy it is. And now, after you get a design a little bit the way you want it, then you take this sharp needle and you start poking it into your canvas. So if you were a painter, it would be like applying your paint.
Oh, it does act like a brush, practically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm doing is adhering the colors into that white object. And you can get as detailed as you would like.
Are you kidding?
Well, sometimes...
You could, but nobody else can.
No, you can. And add something else to it as you're going along, thinking it needs a little accent.
Yeah.
And then
Oh, that's amazing.
You step back and you say, I'm not really happy with this. If you're painting, you have to get another canvas. But if you're felting, you just pull that off. And you say, I think that was the wrong color. I didn't want to start with that one. I'm going to start with something else instead. And so you can work this for quite a while and in different directions so that you can create, the pictures grow. People sometimes ask me how long it takes to do a picture, and sometimes it takes a couple of days. Sometimes it takes a month. It sits on the dining room table so that I can, or on an easel, so that I can see it as I'm walking by. And then I say, I'm just not happy with the colors. Mm-hmm. I'm just not happy. It needs more shading, or the sky needs more color. And so you can always just pull something out and add something else to give that image the depth and the color and the variation that you want.
You make it sound very easy. However, the other people are not Renaissance people, and they're not world-class artists.
Well,
and so what if a person didn't know how to draw, for example?
Okay.
And they love this kind of work.
Okay.
What if you just did like a modern?
Right. You can do anything you want. I have people coming over to the house, and we will often start with a canvas that's quite small. And then sometimes they will even draw a picture with a marking pen on it, or they will copy a stencil and fill in that stencil with colors, or they will take a picture so that they will copy a picture from a magazine, so that you can start with something that's very, very simple from a children's book, or you can get up to an elaborate photograph. It's easy to teach children. It's easy to teach people of all ages because it's so flexible and it's just fun. You can't make a mistake.
You can't.
No. If you've made a mistake, you start over again.
I didn't know about that at all.
Yes, yes.
But the fact that what I can't believe, because I heard your talk and saw it, I thought, who in the world would ever be able to accomplish this? But you've had so many art projects in your life. And also, I want to tell the audience that you were mayor of Los Altos Hills. So you are not just an artist, but you're a politician, you're a teacher, you graduated from Stanford. You've had exhibits all over the world, and you're going to be at Filoli, which I think was such an honor.
Yes, I'm teaching classes at Filoli. I have groups of friends who come over to my house I was going to give classes, but it's more fun to just play. So these are our play dates, when we just come over and play with the fleece. So it seems complicated, but once you start playing with it, with any kind of a toy, it's flexible, and it's just something you learn from from simple projects to the more complex.
Like your pictures, I just simply can't believe. I can't believe any of this. And your sculptures, like those birds, are just darling.
Well, I invite anyone to try. Some of the material is available even at some Walmarts or Joann's, or certainly online if you look for beginning felt kits. Some of the kits are not beginner friendly, but they'll at least give you a chance to start experimenting.
And not only that, like when I do some of my art projects, like my nails, I get tired of the color, so I just stab stuff on. So you never know. To me, art is always growing.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But
Absolutely.
I just fantasized about you, and I thought, the more I've gotten to know you, Ginger, how do you even sleep at night? I mean, your brain must be making up all these fantasies about what you're doing, and I mean, how do you deal with your creative mind, really?
Well, the nice thing is that you start with doing something and then you think, that was successful, but what can I do next time to take it one step further? So you're always building on your last project to take it in another direction or just sharing with other people. So it's one of those lovely art projects where you are always learning and learning new skills, and it's always
So exciting.
exciting to see what's going to come out.
Now, we're just about at the end of today. Didn't it go fast?
Yes.
And next month, you're going to be on part 2 of the show, showing the gourds. That's our teaser, because I've just never really enjoyed an artist as much. And I thank you so much. I can't wait for next month. I want to thank my wonderful crew. I mean, this is such a fun thing to do, and when you have world-class Renaissance people like you. And of course, I want to thank our audience for watching. And here's the drama of Suzanne's studio. I simply can't wait until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.